The following program is a production of the Fairfax Network, Fairfax County Public Schools. Lila Says Meet the Author with Bruce Cameron is coming up next. Good girl, Lila.
Welcome to Meet the Author. I'm your host, Emily Godfrey. Joining me in the studio today is New York Times bestselling author W. Bruce Cameron. Welcome, Bruce.
That's great to be here, Emily. Thanks.
Also joining us via Skype are students from West Springfield Elementary School. Hello, everyone. What an enthusiastic welcome. That's awesome. Well, we'll come back to you guys a little bit later. Bruce has written for newspapers, television, and films, but today he will be talking about his books. A few of his series titles include A Dog's Purpose, Puppy Tales, and the most recent in the Puppy Tales series, Lily's Story, A Rescue Dog to the Rescue. Well, Bruce, all of those book titles give me pause, and I can tell that we're going to have a doggone good show today.
Okay, I hope you just made that up and didn't write it down ahead of time.
No, it's so good. But in all seriousness, I know that you've written over 20 books, novels. Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not going to stop. I've always wanted to do this. I always wrote, even when I wasn't selling books, I wrote them.
That's amazing. And how many do you have coming out right now, you think?
In this year, I'll have 7 books come out.
Wow. Is it hard to keep track of all those stories?
It kind of is. I have to be really careful not to name the characters the same as they are in other books, because that's the first thing people say is, oh, I noticed you named this dog Emily, but the dog was Emily in another book. Are they the same dog? And I'm like, oh, no, it's just that I forgot.
That's a lot to keep track of. Well, 6th grade students at West Springfield Elementary have a variety of books that have some questions for you.
Great.
Who has the first question for Mr. Cameron? Hi, what's your question?
My question is, have you always dreamed of being an author?
So have you always dreamed of being an author?
I cannot remember a time when I didn't want to be an author. From the 4th grade, I sat down to write my first book. I called it Bad Luck Bruce. It was the story of a boy who had 2 evil sisters, so it was based on a true story. Because I do have evil sisters. If you see them run away, they're still evil.
All right, who has the next question for Mr. Cameron? Hi.
Hello.
What's your question?
What was your inspiration on writing about the dogs' lives?
Yeah, you know, the way A Dog's Purpose, which was the first dog book that I wrote, came into being was because I was driving up the coast of California with this woman that I had started to date. We were going up to meet her parents, and at my age, when you're going to meet the parents, that's a big deal. So, and we're about halfway up the coast, and she suddenly turns to me and says, I will never have another dog. And I'm thinking, well, then I'm going to have to let you out at the next gas station, because there's no way I'm going through life without a dog. So when I want to make a point, I usually tell a story. In this case, I told the story of a dog who reincarnates and remembers each life. And the reason I was doing that was I was trying to convince her that if she would just open her heart to another dog, the same love that she got from her first dog would come back to her in some form if she just knew how to recognize it. And she said at the end of that, you've got to write that as a book. And so I did. And I wrote A Dog's Purpose.
What a great story. And how true is that, you know? Like the love that dogs have for their humans and vice versa is so strong.
Yeah, it's an unbreakable bond. And that is what I write about when I write about dogs, is their unconditional love for their people.
Well, we have some more questions. Hi, West Springfield Elementary School. What is your question for Mr. Cameron?
Our question is, which one of the puppy stories is your favorite?
That's a tough one because I love my puppy tales. I love all of them, but I think my favorite is Lily's story. And the reason for that is that this idea of a puppy who gets rescued and then winds up living at a rescue and helping rescue other animals, it was so exciting for me that I've decided to write a whole book series about this same dog. So this year, I've got a series of chapter books coming out for first and second graders called Lily to the Rescue. It is a 4-book series so far about this dog, Lily, and her adventures with her girl, Maggie Rose.
All right, who has the next question?
Do you work on more than one book at a time? If so, how do you balance your time?
Okay, great question. Yes, I work on more than one book at a time because I have to. I have 7 books coming out this year, which means I'm always rewriting one while I'm coming up with ideas and outlining the next one. And I don't balance. My life is completely out of balance. I feel like I'm always falling over. I can't get anything done on time. I think I've maybe bitten off too much to chew, but I can't help it. I love doing this. So I don't have the secret for the balance. Maybe yoga or meditation, or what I do is nap. I take naps. That's the only way I can get by.
All right, we have one more question right now. Hi, what's your question?
Hi, my question is, what was the process of turning your books into movies, and how is writing for movies different than writing books?
Well, that is a great question. I'm so glad to be able to talk about it because it is really different. When you're writing a book, you have a lot of room to run. The book can come in 10,000 words longer, nobody cares. If you're writing a screenplay, you have pretty much got to be wrapping it up around page 99, and if you go past 120 pages, no one's even going to read it because it's too long. So the first part is the discipline. You've got to tell the whole story in those pages or it's not going to get made. And that means if I'm adapting one of my own books, I have to take scenes and characters that were really important to me and get rid of them because they just won't. It would be a 9-hour movie if I shot the whole thing. So that's mainly the process. It's mainly about cutting, and you cut so much that now the story doesn't make sense anymore. So now you have to write new scenes to stitch it all back together. And it's the difference is between night and day. It's that different of a process. They're both fun. And it's frankly easier to write a screenplay because they're so short.
Well, those were awesome questions, and we will come back to you a little bit later in the show. Thank you so much. Do you have a question for Bruce Cameron? Join the conversation and give us a call. So we also have a few email questions for you, so we're going to go to those now. So let's take a few of them. This one is from Claremont Elementary School's 4th grade book group. And it says, do you really know the dogs you write about, like Lily, the rescue dog?
So when an author writes a book, they have to invent characters. Some authors I know base their characters on people or animals that they've met before. I just try to build them from scratch. Because for me, the art of writing is not based on what I've seen in the world, but rather what I'm seeing in my head. And that comes out of me. I express that as words. So no, I don't really know Molly, Bailey, Ellie. I don't. I know a lot of dogs, but not any one of them are based on real dogs.
Wow. So do you know much about rescue organizations?
Well, I'm actually on the board of one of a rescue organization in Denver, and I'm working closely with Best Friends, which is a national rescue organization.
And do you use any of those connections to help with research when you're thinking about writing these books?
Sometimes I ask people to send me puppy videos, and that'll pretty much blow a week. I'll just sit there watching puppy videos, and then there's another puppy video.
What a great job, though, right?
Oh, I know. Yeah, I love it.
That's very interesting. Well, we have another email question. This one is from Miss Intrator at John Adams Elementary School, and she writes, how did you go from being a humor columnist to writing children's books?
What a weird transition it was for me. I was writing a newspaper column, and I sold this story. I sold one of the columns as a book, 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. And it went crazy and became a TV show, so I moved out to Hollywood to work on the show. And then I wrote another humor book, and then I wrote another humor book. And the third humor book I wrote about, nobody really bought. It was 8 Simple Rules for Marrying My Daughter, and it turns out women who are engaged to be married, they don't have a sense of humor. So nobody wanted to buy that book, and my agent says, you know, you're going to have to write something else, because nobody's going to buy any more 8 Simple Rules books from you. So I thought, well, what am I going to write about? And then there was that car ride, and I started talking to that woman who liked the story so much, by the way, she married me, about this dog who reincarnates. And then it occurred to me that I had parents saying my books were a little intense. A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Journey, just found the whole storyline a little intense. And they said, can you write a book for my child? Something that my child can wrap his or her brain around. And I said, yeah, I can write children's books. So I just started pulling the stories from A Dog's Purpose and A Dog's Journey and turning them into standalone books that children love to read.
Well, as a librarian, I'm really grateful that they said that to you, because my students love your books.
Oh, good.
And I love that they get a chance to read such awesome stuff. And I know that the students at West Springfield Elementary School, they've taken a deep dive into a variety of your books. So the 6th graders collaborated, created, and presented projects that examine themes of purpose and character found in many of W. Bruce Cameron's books. Let's take a look.
Empowering young people to become their best selves and to build and foster positive relationships with others is the mission of the Positivity Project.
Our school participates in Positivity Project, where they're looking at the 24 positive character traits, and each week has a different focus. And so students regularly are asked to use what they know about the positive character traits and apply it to the books that we're reading.
Molly and Ellie are super playful, energetic pups, so we decided to tell you what we think Molly and Ellie's Positivity Project traits are. We think Molly's traits would be love, curiosity, zest, and enthusiasm.
Ellie is a German Shepherd for the K9 unit. She's brave, kind, and can persevere.
We very intentionally chose certain books. I chose to read Ellie's story as a read aloud with my class, and we were able to tie in a lot of those positivity traits in order to figure out why they were so important and how it either helped or hurt a character at any given time.
After reading a variety of Cameron's uplifting canine capers, students identify and assign different character traits to both dog and human characters.
Ethan and Bailey becomes attached to each other, and Ethan showed a great, true, deep love, and Bailey returned that love.
Given the opportunity to show what they know, students are encouraged to unleash their creativity and present their projects in new and interesting ways.
I had a student who used some soccer balls to try and figure out how the plots of A Dog's Purpose would be different if different events had taken place or had happened to different characters.
Some projects involved skits.
Stop right there.
The scene of the skit is when Jacob gets shot. Put your gun down slowly, because it's the turning point for a dog like Ellie. Ellie!
Another original idea, a mock Instagram page. Some projects compared and contrasted characters. There even was an animated book trailer. Through these book projects, students collaborate, create, and learn the true lessons of character, one tail wag at a time.
Good girl, Ellie, you found me.
Well, it must be gratifying to see how your books can inspire learning in the classroom.
Oh, it's just so much fun. I really didn't even think I would ever write a children's book, and now I don't really want to do anything else. I just love the way the kids respond.
Wonderful. Well, we have a phone call right now that we're going to go to. So, caller, what is your name and question for Mr. Cameron?
This is Max. I was wondering how many dogs you have.
Hi, did you say your name is Max? Hi, and he's wondering, how many dogs do you have?
So I only have one dog right now. His name is Tucker. When we got Tucker, we lived in the top floor of a high-rise. So we got a puppy, and let me tell you, puppy training, housebreaking a puppy in a high-rise is a real challenge. And we just decided no more dogs than Tucker for a while. And I don't think, Tucker thinks he's a superstar. He doesn't really believe that any other dog could possibly come close to being as important as he is.
And what kind of dog is Tucker?
Tucker's about 24 pounds of suspect DNA. We don't know what got in there. He barks like a beagle. He's got some fur like a poodle. He's got a face of a golden. He's a little dog, wiry terrier hair on his back. I don't know.
It sounds like he has a very big personality, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he runs the household.
Does he ever inspire any of your characters?
Oh, you know, all dogs inspire me to write about them because they're the most joyful, optimistic creatures in the world, and they just are always happy to be doing whatever it is we're doing.
I just have a question for you. Do lots of people show you pictures of their dogs and talk to you about their dogs?
That's kind of all I do now is look at pictures on phones of dogs. And as soon as people say, "Oh, you're Bruce Cameron, I want to show you my dog Butch." That's it.
Great for stories, right?
Yeah.
Well, we have some more questions from West Springfield Elementary School.
Great.
So, hi, students. Who's ready with the next question?
Do you ever get sad while writing one of your books? If so, how do you keep writing?
Oh, do you ever get sad when writing your books? And if so, how do you keep going with the story?
You know, something that an author needs to do is get emotionally involved with what's happening, or the emotions won't leap off the page. So I have sobbed writing a story. I have cried when a dog dies. I was so moved by the story of Ellie, and then how that ends. It really seems to me that there's no other way for an author to be true to the work unless the heart is completely open. So, great question.
All right, who has the next question for Mr. Cameron?
Hi, I'm Bella. Have you ever had a book turn out differently than you imagined?
Well, let me tell you that the way I do it is I write an outline, and then I rewrite the outline, and then I rewrite the outline, so that by the time I am sitting down to write the actual book, I am pretty certain how it's going to end. In fact, very often I know what the last line of the book is going to be. This is one of the things that I learned to do over time. The biggest mistake I made as an author in the very beginning was that I didn't have an outline. I just started writing because I was so excited to be doing it, and then I didn't know how it was going to end. So that hasn't happened to me. All of my books turn out pretty much the way I intended.
What great advice, though, for getting started if you have a budding story in your mind, is to try to figure it out in an outline first.
Yeah, and I'm not saying stick with the outline. Just start putting the story down on paper. When I first start writing, I go to a whiteboard and I write. It's just squiggles all over the place. I'll draw a circle around a character name, and I'll point an arrow, and I'll say, gets lost in the woods, and that's how I do it. It's not really an outline. It's more of a mess. But, thoughts are messy at first, and the job of an author is to corral the mess and turn it into an organized story.
What a great writing tip for our students. That's awesome. So who has the next question? Hi.
Hi. Was it difficult to get your first book published?
Oh, I wrote 9 unpublished books before I sold my first one. It took me my whole life. I mean, I wrote my first book in college, and I knew it wasn't going to be any good because your first one never is. But I thought my second one was pretty good, and I thought the third one was pretty good, and the fourth one, and the fifth one, and the sixth one. So then finally, when I finally sold my first book, I was old. So yeah, it was like the hardest thing I've ever done.
How did you keep going?
Some people say that I just didn't learn from my mistakes, but honestly, I was learning with each mistake. And the way it worked for me was I always felt like every book was getting better. They just weren't getting better fast enough. But finally, when I wrote my 10th book and sold it, I knew that I had perfected my craft mostly by trial and error, and most of that was error.
But that's a really good lesson, because it takes a long time of rewriting and rewriting to write a book, I'm sure.
Oh, that is. Everybody says writing is rewriting. That's absolutely the case. My children had the misfortune of growing up in a household with an author for a father, and so my daughter would show me a paper that she had written, and I'd hand it back and say, well, you have to rewrite this. And she'd say, it's not that important. I'd say, no, it's important that everything you write be good. But you know what happened? My daughter is now a police officer, and the district attorney's office keeps giving her commendations for how well written her reports are. It turns out if you're going to prosecute somebody, you have to have a really good police report. Well, all that writing and all that rewriting that I had her do, that turned her into an effective police officer. So writing is really important, even if you're not planning to be a writer.
In every profession.
It really comes down to communication, and most communication that you need to keep record of is in written form.
Wow. So we have one more question right now. Hi, what's your question?
Do you plan to write a book where the main character is a different animal than you have written about before?
I love that question because I keep telling my publisher we could write about other animals. I mean, they don't always have to be dogs. But I think right now if I wrote a story about a motorcycle, they'd put a dog on the cover. They really feel like, no, if it's going to be a Bruce book, it's going to be a book with a dog. But I will tell you, I did write a book called Emery's Gift, and it's got a grizzly bear on the cover because it's a story about an 8th grade boy who makes friends with a grizzly bear, or at least thinks he does. It's kind of hard to make friends with a grizzly bear. It didn't sell as well because it turns out that in America, fewer people have grizzly bears than dogs, and nobody told me that.
Well, thank you, Wes Springfield. Again, those are all great questions. If time permits, we'll come back to you a little bit later in the show, okay? Awesome. So we have a phone call. So caller, what is your name and what's your question?
Hi.
What's your question?
My name is Sarah, and my question is, what type of books does he like to read?
Ooh, what kind of books do you like to read? Great question.
That's a great question, Sarah. First, I want to tell you that when I'm outlining a book, I always call the female character Sarah. I usually change the name, but she always starts out as Sarah. I don't know why. I just like the name. So the question.
What kind of books do you like to read?
Oh, do I like to read? I'm sorry. I got so excited about the name Sarah. I completely forgot it. I don't read the kind of books that I write. It's important to me to not get into a position where I read a book and some of the ideas in that book about dogs have to do with something that I might want to write about. So I don't want to ever be accused of stealing an idea. So I read thrillers. I read action books. I'm a typical guy. I like to go to movies and watch helicopters blow up and stuff like that. And my wife thinks I'm crazy.
Well, there are a lot of thrilling scenes in your books, though. Do you find that's helpful when you're writing those scenes?
Yeah, you know, I like that you said that because I have my producing partner, Gavin Pallone, who produced A Dog's Purpose and A Dog's Journey and A Dog's Way Home. He says I could write horror novels. He says that my books keep him so tense that he has to put the book down. Like when he read A Dog's Journey, he was so upset. He said several times, I don't think I can finish this.
Well, we have another phone call. So, caller, what is your question? Hi, caller.
My question is, ever quitting in your career?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Did you ask if he ever wanted to quit his career?
No. Did you ever want to quit your career?
Did you ever want a different career?
Oh. I didn't want it, but I had it. I was in finance with General Motors. I've sold insurance. I've repossessed cars. I've been a consultant, a computer programmer. So I've had a lot of different jobs, but they were all just to make enough money so that I could afford to sit down and write a book, which, of course, we know the story. It didn't sell. So I had to keep what they call a day job. All musicians and comics and all of them, they use the term day job quite a bit to mean that's the job that puts the food on the table while you're busy trying to practice your art.
Well, could you talk a little bit about your research process? Like, how do you learn about different dog breeds, and do you include those traits in your stories?
I talk a lot to dog experts, and I also know a lot of dogs from the dog park. And it's important to me, though, I really feel like rescue dogs are such a great thing. It's just so important to me that people understand that you can rescue a beagle if you like beagles, or you could rescue a beagle mix and it might be more fun. I think my dog Tucker has some beagle in him because he barks like a beagle. But I also, when I'm trying to research, I will go to the place where I'm going to be writing about. I'm writing a book right now that'll be out next Christmas, and it takes place in Traverse City, Michigan. So I go to Traverse City, Michigan every couple of weeks just to see how it's going up there. Tell you what, it's snowing like crazy and it's really cold. But in the summer, it's really warm. So I want to go up there a lot. So research for me is like living it, like experiencing it. And so if I'm writing about a German Shepherd, I go to the dog park and I interact with all the German Shepherds.
A sense of purpose is a theme found in many of your books. Dogs and humans, they have to overcome lots of obstacles. Sometimes they do it alone, sometimes they do it together. Why is the theme of purpose so important to you?
Well, I think it starts with the dogs, because we don't always recognize that dogs need to have a job. They need to have a sense of their purpose. And even if their purpose is to sit in your lap while you're watching television, they think of that as being their job. And we did this to them. We bred dogs over thousands of years to work for us, to have a purpose. And it's not really something that they can abandon. It's as instinctive to them as wagging their tail or barking. So, and if dogs are going to have a purpose, then shouldn't their people have a purpose as well? And sometimes, like in A Dog's Journey with CJ, she's a little adrift. She's not sure what her purpose is, but over time she comes to figure that out. And by the end of the book, she knows what her purpose is. So it is a really important theme for me, and I suppose that if I were writing about some other animal, maybe it wouldn't emerge as such an important element.
Did you have any dogs growing up as well?
Oh, yeah. We started when I was in 8th grade, at exactly the age Ethan is when he meets Bailey. I met a dog named Cammy. Cammy was a little Labrador puppy that came into our lives. And my parents very, very quickly figured out they liked dogs better than their own kids. So we always had, there were 3 children and there were always 3 dogs. So I can't remember a time when we didn't have dogs everywhere. And as I said, my dad used to stand in the kitchen and make a delicious smelling stew for the dogs. The kids would eat peanut butter sandwiches because he could make that, but the stew he made for the dogs, it smells wonderful. I never got a bite of it.
You never tried it?
I was never allowed.
You never tried it?
No, it was for the dogs.
Stew?
It was for the dogs.
So we have time for one more question from our students at West Springfield Elementary School. So hi, what is your question?
Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Oh yes, I have advice. My advice is this. We writers have a tendency to believe a story is only good if we hand it to somebody and they read it and say this is good. It's as if we can't judge for ourselves that we've done something really good. But if it's good enough for you, that should be good enough. Art is art, no matter who is doing it. And if you write a story and you think it's really good, don't let anybody tell you that it's not. Because if you go by what other people think, you're not going to make it as a writer. You're not even going to enjoy your own story. So take pride in what you've done and know that if it's good enough for you, it's good enough.
What great advice. That's awesome. Thank you, West Springfield Elementary School, for joining us today. Those are wonderful questions. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye. And Bruce, thank you for chatting with us today about your books. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, this has been so much fun. Thank you. I've never done anything like this before, and it was great.
If you would like to learn more about W. Bruce Cameron, visit his website. To learn more about our upcoming programs, visit the Fairfax Network. For the Fairfax Network, I'm Emily Godfrey. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep dreaming. Thanks for watching.